Many people claim that Sasuke Uchiha has quote-unquote plot armor, and that's the reason why he wins fights, especially in Naruto Shippuden. It's interesting that these people completely ignore when other characters have, you know, quote-unquote plot armor and they win fights and maybe they shouldn't. And yet they try to grasp at straws whenever they talk about Sasuke to say, well, Sasuke shouldn't have won this fight because they don't like Sasuke for whatever reason, even though he's the best character in the series. So I'm gonna be debunking every argument people make about Sasuke having plot armor, and we're just gonna be talking about why he doesn't have plot armor. And the first main reason why, it's because plot armor does not exist. Plot armor is a stupid term in of itself, because technically every character has plot armor up until they don't. Let me explain this a little bit better. Now, in real life, when two people fight or play a sport against each other, there's always a chance that each of them have to win this particular contest. It comes down to luck, skill, and many other factors. And people really try to apply this same logic to stories. Now, obviously, it's much better for a story when a character wins and it makes sense when the victory feels earned. But some people tend to forget that there is somebody writing the story and designing it to be the way it is. Whenever Kishimoto writes a fight for the Naruto series, he already knows which character is going to win. And let me clue you in about something here, because every time any character wins a fight in the Naruto series, the character wins the fight because of the plot, and also because of themes and character arcs. Every single fight serves the story in different ways, and they are designed by Kishimoto to do so. So saying that Sasuke wins his fights because the plot requires him to is technically a correct statement, but this is a correct statement for every single winner of every single fight in the Naruto series as well. Was it plot armor when Sasuke beats Naruto in the end of Naruto Part 1? Oh, and I guess, because the story was supposed to go that way. Kishimoto wanted Sasuke to go train with Orochimaru, leaving the Leaf Village, and for that, he had to beat Naruto. And also, Naruto versus Sasuke was a fight that was pretty much being set up since the beginning of the series that we were very excited to watch, and that really developed both characters to an excellent degree. Does Sasuke have plot armor here? Well, I guess he does, because he's supposed to win the fight for the story to continue the way Kishimoto intends it to. So plot armor is just a term that doesn't even make much sense. However, just because there is a predetermined victor in the eyes of the author, it doesn't mean that the fight cannot be bad. Ideally, the author should strive to make the fight feel realistic in terms of the universe it's played on. Of course, it's not realistic in real terms in Naruto because people have chakra and they can use special powers and spit fireballs, but it needs to have internal consistency and make sense within universe. And I understand this is kinda what people claim when they say that Sasuke has plot armor in his fights. It's just that his fights don't feel believable because the way he wins just doesn't make much sense. But obviously Sasuke was predetermined to win those fights before Kishimoto even began writing them. However, are Sasuke's victories really contrived in the Naruto series? No. They are not. And I'm gonna be evaluating every single fight that Sasuke takes place on, at least the ones that are very controversial. The first one is Sasuke versus Deidara. Now, there are a lot of points people bring up to say Sasuke shouldn't have won this fight, and I'm gonna go through all of them. The first and most basic one is that lightning style should not be able to deactivate Deidara's bombs. It's just completely arbitrary and it came out of nowhere. To that I say, well, it did not come out of nowhere. As a matter of fact, Kishimoto set up the Earth-style weakness as being lightning-style in the Kakuzu arc. We see that when Kakashi pierces through Kakuzu's heart with his Raikiri, even though Kakuzu had a diamond skin protecting him. And then people will say, well, but Deidara's explosions are a Kage Genkai. They're not just Earth-style, they're Earth and lightning-style combined, which is true. But Deidara's creations are made of clay, which really resemble Earth. Also, it's not as though Sasuke just got handed the information about lightning-style defusing the clay bombs. He literally had to investigate during the fight, trying things out to determine if he could defuse the bombs with lightning style, which is very clever, the character thinking on his feet. And if you still say, well, but it's so arbitrary, it just makes Sasuke's victory so easy because he has a perfect counter for Deidara. And I could say something like, well, it's very arbitrary that Deidara has a jutsu that can explode you from within a molecular level. We never saw that before, but Deidara used C4 Karura out of of nowhere. Just think about it, if Deidara didn't have that, then Sasuke disarming the clay explosives wouldn't even be that impactful, because that's the most important thing he does in terms of disarming. Sure, he did disarm some conventional explosives, but the only time he really needed to disarm the explosives and not die because of it was when Deidara used C4 Karura. And it just makes the fight a lot of fun to watch when there are powers you can use to counter each other. You could say the same thing about Neji's Gentle Fist countering Kidomaru's web, for instance. It was the perfect counter for the jutsu, and that's why the characters fought each other, because their powers are very interesting, especially when they interacted with each other, which made for a very dynamic and strategic fight. Think about it from Kishimoto's perspective. He could have chosen anything really to make Sasuke win the fight here. He could have made Sasuke's fire style powerful against the explosives. He could have tried a lot of different things, but he chose what he had set up before. Lightning style being strong against earth. Now people say, well, how is lightning style strong against the ground? It's not supposed to work like that in the real world. Well, the Naruto world is not the real world. It's a world filled with magic with different rules, so just accept them. If Kishimoto set them up beforehand, you just accept them because they are set up. You don't question people having chakra, which is completely unrealistic. So yeah, lightning does damage to earth. The other argument people say is that Deidara had an eye trained to resist genjutsu, and yet Sasuke's genjutsu worked on him. That's the entire point of the fight. Deidara has a lot of jealousy towards Itachi and the Uchiha clan because he sees them as better art. He's jealous of them. He saw Itachi in the flashback almost as a god, and he couldn't bear the fact that somebody's art was superior to his. That's why he trained his eye to surpass the Uchiha art, and yet he failed. That's the theme of the entire fight. Deidara's art did not prevail over the Uchiha art, and it's very much demonstrated in the final moments of the fight when Deidara uses his magnum opus in C0 and Sasuke counters it flawlessly. And I'm gonna get more into that later because people also have problems with that. But Sasuke's genjutsu simply overpowered Deidara's resistance to it, which first of all makes sense because Sasuke is an extremely powerful genjutsu user, mechanically speaking, and it makes sense for the themes of the fight, so there's no issue with that whatsoever. And now there's probably what people think is the biggest issue with this fight, the ending of it. How Sasuke was able to reverse summon himself out of Deidara's C0, and yeah, people say this sucks, Sasuke should have never been able to do that for several reasons. Now the first one people always bring up is that Sasuke was out of chakra when he summoned Manda, and summoning something of that size and power takes a lot of chakra, as it's established in Naruto Part 1 when Naruto needs the 9 Tails' chakra to summon Gamabunta, which is relative to Manda. The only problem with that statement is that it's just completely incorrect, because Sasuke simply wasn't out of chakra. Deidara does say, yeah, you're out of chakra, man, but Deidara is not a sensory type. He cannot see chakra. He had no clue. He just kind of guessed Sasuke was out of chakra, but everything else pointed to the contrary. First, because Sasuke had his Sharingan activated. This is a sign he wasn't out of chakra. Sharingan takes chakra to remain active, and it's a pretty decent amount. Secondly, Orochimaru was not breaking free of Sasuke's body. We clearly saw in the Itachi fight that Sasuke did run out of chakra, and when that happened, Orochimaru was able to break free of Sasuke's quote-unquote imprisonment because his chakra would no longer be there to suppress him inside of his body. If that had happened in the Deidara fight, Deidara would be fighting against the 8-headed serpent that Itachi fought. And thirdly, another justification people bring up to say Sasuke was out of chakra is that he looks just very tired in this situation. He's panting. And the reason for that is actually very obvious. A couple of pages before that, he Chidori'd himself to deactivate the nano explosives. Yes, that would cause you a lot of pain, it would make you pant, and it would leave scuff marks around your body to demonstrate that you're hurt. But just because you're hurt, it doesn't mean you're completely out of chakra. Also, chakra is not something that's measured in very precise terms at all in the entire series. There's no chakra bar above the characters' heads in the manga or the anime. It's just something they kind of say, well, I'm running out of chakra, or I still have enough chakra. It's a much more malleable tool for the author to do whatever he wants with it. Sometimes Kishimoto sets up a hard limit for the amount of jutsus a character can use. For example, in the Chunin exams when Sasuke could only use 2 Chidoris every day, or he would kinda die to his curse mark. But usually it's just a measure of, well, I have plenty of chakra still, or I'm running out of chakra, or I have no chakra anymore. And Sasuke honestly didn't even spend that much chakra in the Deidara fight if you think about it. He used his Chidori once, he used the Chidori spear once, he He used Chidori needles once, he lays his sword with lightning, he used Chidori stream to get rid of Deidara's snakes, and he used the curse mark a couple of times with a couple of snake jutsu that weren't even very impactful. And his Sharingan was also activated, but for a Shippuden Sasuke, this is not that much of a chakra expenditure. He would still have chakra to summon Manda. It makes complete sense. He still had chakra. And then there's the argument, well, he had no time, man. Deidara should have caught him in the explosion. Even if he summoned Manda, Manda should have been obliterated. So Manda did take a bit of a blast, not the entire thing, but Manda did die. And it's very much implied that Manda did take a bit of the explosion, but it was able to reverse summon Sasuke in time, not to be completely destroyed with it, and that's why it died and it's not disintegrated. But Kishimoto set that up in the beginning of the fight. The first thing that happens when Deidara comes from above and tosses some explosives, Sasuke uses a snake summon to protect himself as a shield, and the summoning was practically instant. So Kishimoto set up that Sasuke can summon his snakes very fast, and that's how he used them to escape C0. And then people will say, well, but he never set up that you could unsummon yourself and then escape places. But then just think a little bit for a second. If your summon eats something in the real world when you summon it to fight alongside you, I mean, maybe the summon's even like eating some grass, whatever. Well, when you unsummon it, will the grass remain behind? Like, will it just pop out of the summon's stomach and lay on the ground? No, it will go back with the summon to the summon's home. The same thing happens with a person. Manda swallowed Sasuke and unsummoned himself per Sasuke's commands. Therefore, Sasuke was able to escape with a reverse summon, which he still had chakra to use. Deidara's art was not enough to beat the Sharingan, the ultimate art. Some people also just choose to ignore several facts around the fight between Sasuke and Deidara. First, Tobi was helping Deidara planting those mines underground to hurt Sasuke while Deidara was flying up in the air with his C2 dragon and shooting him bombs, making the fight more difficult to Sasuke. Also, Sasuke caught Deidara from behind and chose to just punch him instead of killing him outright after he defused the C4 Karuta for the second time. And why Sasuke did that? Well, because Sasuke was fighting Deidara for information. He wanted to know where Itachi was. That was the entire reason why Sasuke was even fighting Deidara. He didn't want to kill Deidara, so he just punched him, but if he wanted to, he would have killed him before he could even use C0. A kunai slash would have been enough in that particular situation, or even a Chidori. And Sasuke also had Kirin should he need to use. He even said, I had a plan B if my plan A didn't work, and if I couldn't disarm your explosives with lightning style, but I didn't even have to use it. So the way Sasuke wins the fight is actually very well explained. And people who say he had plot armor, he didn't deserve the win, are either people who just don't remember the fight correctly because he just read or watched it once, people who just hate Sasuke and want him to lose and whatever Sasuke does is a bad thing, or people that just don't really understand how plot setups and payoffs work. Now moving on to the Killer Bee fight, another fight that Sasuke has a lot of plot armor, as people like to say, because he is saved by Team Taka dozens of times. Well, not dozens of times, but he is very much saved by them. First, Karin heals his wounds after Bee strikes him with his swords. Then Jugo uses his curse mark to meld itself in Sasuke's body and heal him after the gaping hole Bee opens in his chest after the lariat. And then Suigetsu uses himself almost as bait so that Sasuke, Jugo, and Karin can escape with that massive water avatar he used against the Eight Tails, culminating in Sasuke winning the fight with an Amaterasu, but Bee manages to substitute and Sasuke only gets a tail. And the argument essentially boils down to Sasuke shouldn't have won the fight because everybody was helping him out and he didn't deserve to win. But let me ask you this for a second. Sasuke put a team together not to use them? Like, were they supposed to just hang back during the fight and do nothing, not helping Sasuke at all? Obviously, Sasuke put Team Hebi and then Team Taka together because they were useful to him, because they could support him during fights, and that's exactly what they did. Or maybe you could say, well, Karin healing Sasuke out of the stab wounds is too much, but is that really so? Tsunade was healing herself from much worse wounds back in part 1, and yes, Tsunade's the best healer in the world, but Karin is an Uzumaki with loads of chakra, and Sasuke's wounds, they were bad, but they weren't that life-threatening anyway. Sasuke was still able to move, even with a sword sticking at his body. Then you get Jugo, and we never really saw before or even after what he does to Sasuke, using his curse mark to heal somebody, and he says, well, I can only do this because our bodies are compatible. After all, Sasuke used to have the curse mark and he was very good at using it. So it makes an interesting connection between the two characters, and this also nerfs Jugo, turning him into a kid, essentially. And then Suigetsu uses himself as a meat shield to save Team Taka. And after that, Karin even saves Sasuke and Jugo by just throwing them out of the range of one of the tentacles that hits her, and then the Amaterasu flames leap to her back. And this only happened because Sasuke was very hurt because he used Amaterasu and he wasn't used to it. That was the first time he used it for real. Now, the entire point of this fight was to set up the fact that Sasuke still had feelings towards Team 7 and that he was beginning to see Team 7 in his new team that he was now leading. He was seeing the similarities between them, and he saw that every single member of his squad was literally giving their life away to help Sasuke in the situation. Karin got herself bitten, transferring her life essence to Sasuke to heal him, and then she got hit by Amaterasu to save Sasuke. Suigetsu, as I said, used himself as a meat shield and got a Bijudama to the face, and Jugo literally gave part of his body, becoming a child in the process to save Sasuke. That was the point of the fight, the bonds between Sasuke, Team Taka, and the bond Sasuke had with Team 7 in the past. That's why before Sasuke uses Amaterasu for the first time, he sees the efforts and the sacrifice his teaming is going through for him, and then he remembers Team 7 prompting him to use Amaterasu. And then when Karin gets hit by his own Amaterasu, he forces the Amaterasu away with his new power, the flame control, because he began to care for his team, and he would eventually descend into darkness. We see in the 5 Kage Summit arc that he no longer cared for them. An interesting character arc. Amaterasu was also set up to be this amazingly powerful jutsu that destroys everything it touches. It will burn you until you are turned into ash. It makes sense that Amaterasu would one-shot a tail beast because it's a massive creature. It's difficult to dodge when you're so big, and the flames are by default almost impossible to dodge. That's one of the jutsu's trademarks. You could also say that while Beat using a substitution jutsu makes no sense, it wasn't set up before, but no, it makes sense because it's something you would expect someone like Beat to use to escape a powerful jutsu like that. It's fine. The same thing applies to B being awakened from a genjutsu by his tail beast, which we never saw before, but it makes sense. Well, you need somebody to shake you out of the genjutsu, and if you're a friend of your tail beast, yeah, it makes sense. Perfectly fine. Now, maybe Sasuke should have known about it, but he was clearly caught off guard to create the moment when Jugo had to give his life essence to save Sasuke, becoming a child in the process. Kishimoto could have Sasuke easily dodge that strike from B if he wanted to and not make that moment happen, but that moment was important for the fight and the themes of Sasuke's character and what he was going through in that moment. Now, moving on to the 5 Kage Summit arc, this is the Sasuke-centric arc, and he literally fights against all 5 Kage in some capacity here. He fights against the Raikage, and he does pretty well against him. He has an interesting strategy here, and it would be a tie if Gaara hadn't interrupted him. People say that, well, the Raikage was about to kill Sasuke with his final blow, but Gaara interrupted him. But Sasuke was forming a freaking blaze of Amaterasu around the Raikage. He would have been hit around his entire body. They would at best tie, or at worst for the Raikage, he would just lose and the Susanoo would tank the damage, because the sand was able to tank the Raikage's attack, so I have to assume the Susanoo wouldn't do worse than the sand. And Gaara arrives, and Sasuke barely even fights Gaara. He just breaks the columns and leaves trying to find Danzo. He fights against Mei, and he's struggling a lot here. We see that Sasuke has a lot of pain. He literally says, every single cell of my body hurts when I use the Susanoo. Imagine what Itachi went through when his son was complete, and mine is like a baby Susanoo still. Zetsu comes in and gives him some chakra so that he can escape Mei, and then Onoki one-shots him. But actually no, Obito saved him with Kamui. And then you may be saying, well, but say Zetsu saved him and then Obito saved him again and again and again. You have to also remember that the one who put Sasuke in this predicament was Zetsu himself when he entered the 5 Kage Summit and announced Sasuke had infiltrated the building. Obviously, Obito and Zetsu were testing Sasuke and they wanted him to progress his Mangekyo Sharingan. Characters are also saved every time in Naruto by other characters. It's something very normal, but for some reason when Sasuke is saved, it's a problem. I mean, Sakura was saved 2 times in this very arc. The first time by Kakashi when Sasuke was about to Chidori her, and the second time by Naruto when Sasuke was about to slash her with a kunai. So people getting saved in the last minute is a very common thing in Naruto and in every shonen manga. It's made to increase the tension and to make it very cathartic when the character is saved by another character. It makes the entrance of the new character very exciting. Like if you go through the Naruto series, you can pull up hundreds of examples of a character saving another character in the last second. And Zetsu didn't even save Sasuke in the last second here. He helped him out, but the one who saved Sasuke for real is Obito. Sasuke then kills Danzo, but people don't complain about that because they hate Danzo more than they hate Sasuke, so they tend to root for Sasuke in this fight, even though Danzo's a great character. And the Sasuke vs Danzo fight is a really good fight too. But now let me talk about a fight that Sasuke won that was actually bad and convoluted, and the way Sasuke won was unearned. That will be the Sasuke and Itachi versus Kabuto fight. Now the way they had to win the fight was to defeat Kabuto in a way that wouldn't kill him so that he could release the Edo Tensei. And for them to do that, Kishimoto had to invent a jutsu that ticked every single box. Izanami, the worst jutsu in the Naruto series. Oh, it makes the character fall into a deep slumber. It bypasses the need for eye contact. It makes the target vulnerable to your jutsu so that Itachi can use a genjutsu on him and reverse the Edo Tensei. And it came out of nowhere with no setup. It's just a jutsu used in that one fight to win that one fight. And Itachi kept on saying during the war, every jutsu has a weakness. And when he arrived to fight Kabuto, he was like, and I am your weakness, Kabuto. A very cool moment. So you thought, okay, Itachi's gonna pull off this amazing strategy with Sasuke, his brother, in order to beat Kabuto in a very clever way. But it turns out, no, he just had a jutsu that did that for him. He didn't have to do much to fight against Kabuto here. It's such a boring way to win. And then Kishimoto kind of tries to hide the fact that he just, pulled that out of his rear end by making the jutsu extremely complicated and convoluted. The way Izanami's activated is complete insanity. Like, nobody even understands how it works. Not even Kishimoto himself, I bet. So yeah, that fight feels very unearned when it's won, but nobody bats an eye because it was Itachi who dealt the finishing blow with Izanami and not Sasuke. If Sasuke was the one, people would be extremely mad. There's another thing people mention about the Sasuke fights in Naruto Shippuden, that his opponents just blow themselves up. It was not Sasuke defeating them, but Sasuke fights against them, and they end up dying in the confrontation, and Sasuke does not. Oh, well, I guess it means Sasuke doesn't win the fights because their opponents were forced to do, the explosion thing as a last resort because they didn't have anything else to do. It makes no sense. That argument's just stupid. If you force your opponent to explode himself because he has nothing else to do in the fight to try and kill you, giving your life away in the process, it means you won the fight if you escape that. And I also didn't mention the Itachi fight because Sasuke, he technically won the fight, but Itachi let him win. That was the entire plan behind the scenes. Itachi was orchestrating everything to take Orochimaru away from Sasuke and be killed by him in the process, making Sasuke the hero of the Leaf Village. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. That really helps the channel out, and like the video if you enjoyed it. That helps with the YouTube algorithm. I'll appreciate that very much. Watch this other video right here for more cool Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching, guys.